Okay, morning, everybody. Just wanted to tell you about the best job offer that I've turned down in years. Kind that would have fixed just about everything, not only on paper, but, everything else. At least it seemed like that in a week. And I almost took it. But before I get into any of that, I have to stop and say something because if this show just popped back into your feed after a while, it's been, gosh, I think since December. You're not imagining that. So I think the last episode that I recorded was towards the tail end of December. So if we're actually like looking at it and counting. So, but before the story, let me just start right there. So my name is Dan Kaufman. This is Grace Over Guilt. And I'm glad to be back and recording this. So let's deal with the elephant in the room. So the show's been really quiet and it's been since December, like I mentioned, and it stayed quiet a whole lot longer than I ever planned. So I planned to relaunch, I think probably like February or March. I've been publishing a newsletter, with Grace Over Guilt for quite a while, but it just didn't happen. So it didn't happen. So I'm not going to hand you some big dramatic excuse. I'm not going to sit here and over apologize either, because quite frankly, that's not what this show's about. So here's the straight version. Life just got loud and busy. Rebuild that I talk about on here needed every bit of me. And I hit a stretch where the choice was either to show up on a schedule with something hollow in my hands or go quiet until I actually had something real to say again. So I chose the quiet. I chose the rebuilding, behind the scenes. And, here we are. So I'm still not 100% sure that that was the right call, but it's the honest one. And honest is the whole currency around here. So the mic's back on. Plan for moving forward is going, forward is pretty simple. And more than that, it's consistency, which is the part that actually matters. So we'll have a story on Monday, a lesson on Wednesday, a short moment on Friday. And then we'll have a reset, which will be happening on Sunday, and that'll be in newsletter form. So week in and week out, that's the commitment I'm making out loud to you, to me, and saying it out loud is part of how I keep it. And since it's been a while, and since some of you listening are brand new here, let me actually share you what this thing is. Because I don't want you wandering into a story about a job offer or anything else that I'm going to be talking about with no idea how this show actually came about. So Grace Over Guilt is a show about rebuilding. And specifically, it's about rebuilding after you're the one who's got knocked down, who knocked it down in the first place. So this isn't a highlight reel from some guy who has it all figured out, standing on a mountain, ready to hand you 5 easy tips or tricks. I'm not the one on the other side of this thing. I'm in the middle of it right now, rebuilding a business, rebuilding a life after some really, really hard, mostly self-inflicted years. And I'm telling you that I'm learning while I'm still in it, still learning it in real time. And some weeks that comes out as a story. Some weeks it's more of a lesson. Some weeks it's just a small moment that taught me something that I needed to hear and needed to go through. But it's always real and it's always coming from the inside, never from above it. That's the promise that I make you. So, and then there's the name, Grace Over Guilt. People ask me all the time what that actually means. So let me tell you, because those 3 words are the entire philosophy of this show, packed down really tight. Here's the distinction the whole thing is really built on. And it's the line that I will come back to over and over on the show. So, that way you know what's going on and you can get used to it. So guilt is something you did wrong and actually regretting it. Shame is feeling like a loser and wondering what I'm even doing here. Those two things are not the same, and confusing them will quietly wreck your life. Because guilt, real guilt, is actually very, very useful. Guilt points at the action. It says, hey, I did a bad thing. I can go and I can make it right. I can adjust things. I can apologize, that type of thing. You can work with guilt. Guilt can drive a repair. Shame, though, on the other hand, is a completely different animal. Shame doesn't point at the action. It points directly at you. It says you're the bad thing. And shame has never once built anything in the entire history of the world. Shame just, quite frankly, buries you. And then it calls the burying humility. So grace over guilt is a choice. It's a choice I have to make on purpose almost every day, and some days more than once. And some days just, it seems like every day. It's choosing to take full ownership of what I actually did, no dodging it, no hiding from it, and then still extend myself enough grace to stand back and build something new instead of drowning in the shame that just sits with their hissing, why even bother? Look at you, look at what you did. You're a loser, that type of thing. It's accountability without the self destruction. And that's the whole thing in the one sentence. Take responsibility, put down the self hatred, and get back to work. That's why the motto around here is nothing to prove, nothing to hide. I got that from Jesse Elder, who was in a mastermind years ago, and that's stuck with me. So nothing to prove because I'm not performing for some comeback for anybody's approval. I'm doing it for myself. Nothing to hide, because the hiding is exactly what shame wants from you, and hiding is what keeps you stuck in it. And that's why I keep saying we are becoming undone to become whole, because sometimes you have to let the old version of yourself fall all the way apart, and you have to crash at the very, very bottom before you can build something that actually holds weight, which honestly is exactly what today's story is about. So let's dive right into it. So let me take you back to when this really starts, because to understand the offer and why it was so hard to turn down, you first have to understand the pressure I was when it landed. So it was back in May, so just a few months ago, and the pressure was real. So I'd been adjusting some things, cash flow was really tight. I had bills that were piling up, and it's really kind of a tough situation for me. So I didn't know where to stand. I had some work coming in, but not enough to really kind of cover all my bills. So and then in particular, my Go High Level account, the software that I run my entire business on, was on a payment hold. Couldn't get in there, couldn't do anything. Which is a really polite way of saying that I built my whole operation on top of 1 foot out the door until I sorted out the money. And I was opening my own numbers most mornings and not loving the view. If you've ever been there, you know the exact flavor of it. It isn't just a loud panic, it's just a low, very consistent hum. It's the thing that's already sitting on your chest when you wake up before you even remembered why you feel heavy. It's doing math in your head while you're standing in line at the store, hoping that it doesn't go over the certain amount that you have left in your bank account or on your credit card. It's the quiet, constant background noise of how am I going to make this work? It doesn't scream, but it also never leaves either. So I want to name something about money pressure specifically, because I think we all lie about it. We pretend it's purely practical. It's just numbers. It's just logistics, but it's not. Money pressure goes straight to your identity. It just doesn't ask, can you pay this bill? It whispers, what kind of man can't pay this bill? It takes the spreadsheet problem and turns it into a verdict on your mouth. And that's the dangerous part, because now you're not just trying to solve for cash flow, you're trying to make feelings go away. And the man trying to make a feeling go away will grab things a man solving problems would never would, or even should actually look at. So this is the guilt and shame thing that I talk about all the time, showing up right in your bank account. Guilt says I made some decisions that put me here and I've got to make better ones. That's clean. That makes sense, right? So you can work with that. Shame says I'm a fucking failure. Look at this. And what am I even doing? And shame is desperate. Shame wants out now. It wants that immediate resolution, and it wants it by any door available. So, and I want to name one more thing about that kind of pressure, because it's going to matter for the whole rest of the story. Pressure like that does something to your judgment. It doesn't make you stupid. Well, sometimes it does. But it makes you fast. It makes you want to grab the first solid looking thing that floats by, because when you're treading water or, barely keeping your head above water, everything that floats looks like a rescue raft. So hold that thought. We're going to come back to that. So that's where I was, treading water with shame whispering in one ear. And that's the exact moment that email came in. A fully remote account manager met a media buyer for a really solid company. 140 to 180K a year, 5-6 days a week. The job was to scale other agencies and coaches through paid ads. Now you have to understand that it's not a bad job. This is a really, really solid job. This is the kind of work that I can do in my sleep because I've done it for so many years. I know this world cold. I could walk in on Monday, be useful, and within an hour or two, and the number was real, not a fantasy, not a someday if the stars line up number. A real hits your account every 2 weeks number. More real, if I'm honest, than anything I was looking at my own business that month. They wanted a call on Sunday night. I put it on the calendar, and I want you to notice something. Put it on the calendar. I didn't turn it down. I didn't have some instant burst of clarity. I scheduled the call. In fact, I actually had a couple calls, and part of me was already leaning in. Part of me was already halfway through that mental version of, where I say yes, everything gets fixed, and I get to exhale for the first time in a few months. But then I sat there and I felt the whole thing for exactly what it was and what it was not and what it looked like. So I had a call with the recruiter, and then I had a call with the CEO. He sent me over their whole training, and I went through that training. And then this is when I actually realized that it wasn't for me, because it wasn't just 5 days a week. It was 6 or 7 days a week, 10, 12, 13-hour days. And that was completely against the lifestyle piece that I wanted. So, um, kind of back to this, here's the thing that I've learned about a rescue story, rescue offer. I should be more precise, and I want you to really sit with this one because it's a trap most people never even see. A rescue offer always speaks your exact language. It's got the right title, it's got the right number, it's got everything looks like that bright shiny object that you're chasing, and most importantly, it's got the right timing, which actually gets you because it shows up in the precise week that you're tired enough to stop where your ultimate goals are going. And it makes you want to say yes. It doesn't show up when you're strong and clear and playing offense. It shows up when you're squeezed. It shows up when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you're at your wit's end. It shows up when the fight has gone a little out of you. In fact, a lot out of you. And that's not just some conspiracy either. That's just how it feels from the inside when you're under pressure. When you're squeezed, every door that opens looks like the exit. Every hand that reaches out to you feels like a rope that's here to rescue you. And it's not the offer that the offers get better. It's that your eyes change and your mind starts playing tricks on you. You start reading up every opportunity through the lens of, will this stop the bleeding? Will this help me cover what I need to cover? And an offer that has the right title and the right number and lands in the right week is going to look like for a minute like salvation. And listen, your version of this might not be a job at all. Maybe for you, rescue is a relationship isn't right, but it's warm and it's there and you're lonely. Maybe it's a business partner who will take a scary part off your plate along with half of the things that you were supposed to build yourself. Maybe it's moving back somewhere comfortable, taking the safe gig, borrowing the money from the person who's going to own a piece of you forever once you do. The shape is different for everybody, but the mechanics are all there and they're all the same. It arrives looking exactly like the thing you need in an exact week that you're just way too tired to actually look at it, not only closely, but look at it enough to take a step back and, does this align with your long-term goals? So what I did next, because I think most of us do the same thing, I did the math, and it all came down to numbers. I ran the numbers and the numbers were brutal because the numbers worked. Salary cleared everything. I would have more than enough money to do what I needed to do and want to do. All of that pressure, that low hum, that storyline math, all of it would just evaporate. It would be completely gone. And that's right there is exactly what made it dangerous. So I want you to hear me out on this because it's the hinge of this whole episode. The offer that is easy to turn down is never the problem. Nobody's life gets wrecked by an obviously bad deal. You don't need discipline to say no to garbage. The dangerous one, though, the one you actually have to watch is the one that generally solves the thing, keeping you up at night, because that one doesn't feel like a temptation. It feels like an answer. It feels like relief with your name on it. And the relief is the single hardest thing on earth to say no to, especially when you're exhausted and just burnt out. And here's the tell. Here's the thing that I could feel underneath the number once I stopped staring at the number long enough to actually look at the job. A rope pulls you out of water. This was going to pull me back into a house that I already proved that I couldn't live in. because looking at what the job was underneath the title, the salary, working inside somebody else's system, somebody else's mission, somebody else's name on the door, running the old playbook that I knew inside and out for a company that isn't mine and collect a check for it, doing the exact thing I did before and the thing I'd already outgrown was just with a different logo on my paycheck. That's not a rescue. And I need you to see this difference clearly because everything hinges on it. That's a renovation. And that's taking the old version of my life, the one that I had already decided I couldn't stay in, and slapping a fresh coat of paint on it and calling it a brand new house. Same floor plan, same cracked foundation, same issues, just a nicer color on the walls and somebody else signing the checks. And I've talked about on this show before the idea that renovation is a trap. In fact, if you go back to the newsletters, I've talked about that over the last couple of weeks. You can't renovate your way back into a self that you've already outgrown. Well, this was the exact trap. Wearing the best disguise it's ever worn, a salary, security, don't have to worry about it. Irresponsible, reasonable, everybody would understand disguise. If I'd taken it, not one person in my life would have blinked. They would have said, good, smart, it's about time, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And that's not what made it so hard. Or I should say, that's what made it so hard. The renovation had the whole world's permission stapled in front of it. And here's the actual question I finally asked myself. And I want to hand it off to you too, because the tool that cut through all of it, I stopped asking, can I afford to say no to this? Of course, I couldn't afford to on paper, which is the wrong question. I started asking, is this building or is this renovating? Is this the new house or is it the old one in a brand new coat of paint? And that bright, shiny object syndrome. And the second I asked it that way, the whole thing went quiet because I already knew. I'd known the second that I read the job description, it was a renovation, a very well-paid renovation, but renovation nonetheless. Now, let me tell you what old Dan does here, because old Dan is still very much in me. And he was talking the entire time. Old Dan takes the call, no hesitation. Old Dan takes the job. And here's exactly how he makes it okay with himself. He tells himself it's temporary. He says the words, just a bridge out loud, and he actually believes them. Just a bridge to get across this rough patch. And then, this is a killer, he tells himself he'll keep building his own thing on the side. Nights, weekends, once the pressure lets up a little bit. Now I have to be honest with you about that phrase on the side because it cost me years of my life. I mean, we're talking gobs and gobs of time. There's no other side. I need you to hear that as flat and as plain as I can say. There is no other side. You are either building or you're renovating. Those are the two options. And you only really get to pick one at a time. Can you do both? Yes. But the problem with that is once you do both, you're not putting your best foot forward on either one of them. The second you let somebody else put you on their payroll to run their system, you've picked up the paint roller. And you can tell yourself the roller is temporary all day long. You can promise yourself you'll set it down soon, but your hands are full now. You're in the thick of it. And the thing that you actually are building, the thing that's yours, it's left sitting untouched in the other room, getting cold and growing old. And then you start to forget about it because you're too tired after a full day's worth of work. And it's never going to happen. And here's the math that nobody runs while you're standing on that bridge because the bridge feels so reasonable. It feels so good. 40, 50, 60 hours a week goes to their priorities. And, in this case, it would be 50 to 60 hours, not yours. It's theirs. They're paying for that time. Your sharpest hours, the good ones, the clear-headed morning hours when you actually create things, those go to their clients and their goals. The walks that you take in the middle of the day to just reset and think, that doesn't happen anymore because it's their time. And what's left for your own thing, whatever's still on the bones at 9:00 at night when you're completely fried, when the smart version of you is already clocked out, you don't have any more gas left in the tank. That's where your dream goes, the scraps, the leftovers. And leftovers don't pour a foundation. They can, right, to an extent, but it's not delivering, it's not going to be a very strong foundation. You cannot build the thing that's supposed to change your life on the exhausted tail end of a day you've already handed to somebody else. It's not a discipline problem. It's actually a physics problem. The energy is just not there. You've already spent it. You don't have any more. and it's not going to be productive. And, those of you that know me, I preach, humans aren't designed to work 50, 60, 70 hours a week. That hustle mentality and that hustle structure, while good in a season or a sprint, is not good for you long term. I'm a firm believer of, a 28, 30, 32 hour work week, because that gives you the balance. Now, I want to be fair, because somebody's listening right now thinking, well, Dan, that's a nice principle, but I have a family, I've got rent. I just can't, be pure about this. And you're right. Sometimes you actually have to take the job. Sometimes the bridge is the responsible, correct, keep the lights on move. There's absolutely no shame in that. I'm not telling you to be reckless. What I'm telling you to do is be honest about which one it is. If you take the bridge, take it with your eyes open. Call it a bridge, not a strategy. Put a fence around it. Know that the current is going to pull you towards staying, and it's going to pull hard, and it's going to feel the responsible way. It's going to feel responsible the whole way. The danger isn't just taking the job. The danger is taking the job and lying to yourself about the other side. So just keep that in mind as you're going through this. So I'll say the hard thing, the thing that took me way too long to learn. On the side is where dreams go to be politely ignored. It's really kind of goes in that graveyard of great ideas, but no actions ever actually happened. So it's the most reasonable sounding way to quit that anybody has ever invented. And here's the part that should scare you a little. Nobody quits by giving up. Almost nobody quits by giving up, sorry. Nobody wakes up one day and dramatically throws in the towel. That's not how it happens. People quit by taking the bridge, and slowly, day by day, they just forget to come back. So I didn't take that next meeting, and I had sent them a message and told them, I'm like, this is just not for me, for my lifestyle and everything else. So, and did I feel good about it? No. I'd love to tell you that I felt heroic. I would love to give you the movie version. It didn't feel heroic. There was no music. There was no fist in the air. There was no moment when I stood from my desk a changed man with the sun coming through the window. None of that. It was quiet. That was the whole event. A meeting that I didn't move forward, a job offer that I didn't take. And here's the part that never gets put into the highlight reel. The part I really want you to have, because this is where most people break. The morning after, the pressure was still there, all of it, every single dollar of it. My numbers didn't magically look better because I'd chosen the harder road. The universe did not send me a reward for my integrity. The problem I was trying to escape was sitting there right in front of me, waiting for me, exactly as heavy as the day before. And I went to work with my own thing. I just put my head down and went forward. So that's the whole scene. That's it. A meeting that I didn't, and a job that I didn't take, and the beginning of the following week that felt exactly like the day before, except for one thing. I was building on my own blueprint instead of somebody else's. Nobody could see the difference from the outside. There was no difference on the outside. The only difference in place, the difference existed, was actually inside me. And I think that's the thing nobody warns you about, what the hard call, about the hard right calls. They usually don't pay off right away. Sometimes they don't pay off for an extremely long time. You make them, and then you have to keep living in the exact same hard situation. Except now you're doing it on purpose, on your terms, and for your own reasons. The reward for the right no is not relief. So let me say that again, because it's the whole thing. The reward for the right no is not relief. The reward is that you get to stay yourself. You get to be true to yourself. And some mornings when the pressure's still sitting on your chest, that has to be enough, because it's the only thing in offer, only thing on, that you have. So I called this episode a huge no. And I want to close the word, loop on that word huge, because it's a little bit of a trick. The huge no's almost never feel huge in the moment. That's the whole thing. And they feel like nothing. They feel like a meeting that didn't happen. They feel like a quiet Tuesday. You don't get the swelling soundtrack. You get a slightly awkward non-reply to an email and a pressure that doesn't go away. I remember having a conversation with one of my team members, and he was like, well, that was kind of a really dumb move to turn that down because, I could have helped you with that. And while he was right to a certain extent, it still would have taken away from what I was building and what I wanted to do. So we just kind of have to keep that in mind. There's always going to be people that are going to question that, especially when you kind of go through this. So you only find out, going back to that word huge, how huge they were later. You look back months down the line from a place you could have only gotten to because you said no, and you realize that was it. That quiet, unimpressed, nobody clapped Tuesday was the morning that I stopped renovating and I started to build. That was that hinge. And it's not a very big hinge, it's a small hinge. That was the whole thing quietly turning on its axis, and I almost missed it because it looked like nothing while it was happening. That's how the important stuff usually looks, by the way, not by a lightning strike, not by some dramatic thing that happens, but it's a small, boring, unwitnessed decision that only you understand in the rear view, which, spoiler, is exactly what Wednesday's episode's all about. So here's how you know you've crossed over into a new construction versus renovation. Then I'll bring it back home. So you've crossed over when the answer to, but when the answer you've crossed over when the answer to, but what about the security is just a no. It's not a speech, it's not a manifesto about following your dreams. It's not some noble explanation that you rehearse in the shower so it sounds brave when you finally say it out loud. It's just a no. It's quiet, unimpressive, and it's completely entirely yours. And most people won't even realize that you've done it. So here's what I want you to do this week. I want you to find that offer. You've got one. Almost everybody does. The job, the deal, the shortcut, the person, the thing you keep entertaining, thing you just keep circling back to, keep half considering. That's taken up a lot of mental bandwidth because it looks like a rescue. The thing that would solve the immediate problem while quietly walking you right back into the house you've already left. Again, it's a renovation. You don't have to turn it down today. You don't even need to decide anything at all. Just name it. Say it out loud. Write it down on a piece of paper would be even better. Name it for what it is. And my question about it is this building or is this renovating? Because I found that half the power of these things is that they stay fuzzy. They live in the fog where they get to be a rescue. The second you name a renovation out loud in plain words, it loses most of its grip on you. It can't pretend anymore. So, and you can't either. You just can't pretend. You've got to face it for what it is. So that's the story for today. This is Grace Over Guilt, and I'm Dan Kaufman, and it's good to be back officially. On Wednesday, we're going to talk about what happens after the no, what building the new thing actually feels like day to day. And I'll warn you right now, it's not what the movies promised you, but it's better, and it's a lot more boring. So we'll talk to you on Wednesday.